When two officers clamped handcuffs around her wrists, they thought it was just another routine arrest, another person to process, and move on from. But fate has a way of circling back, and before long they would see her again, not as a suspect this time, but as the judge whose gavel would decide their fate. It happened on a bright afternoon in Aurora, Colorado. The park was alive with movement, kids shouting, and the playground joggers pushing themselves along. The paved loop, families setting out food. Beneath the branches of tall maples near the pond, on a wooden bench, sat a woman named Selena Torres, a well-known attorney admired for her sharp mind and steady composure. She had carved out a rare hour for herself, escaping her hectic schedule. With a thick hardcover book, the words had pulled her deep into another world when the screech of tires shattered the moment. A police cruiser jolted to a stop on the curb, drawing stares from passers-by. The door swung open, and two uniformed officers stepped out. Their movements deliberate, their expressions stern. They scanned the park, but their eyes landed fast on Selena, the lone woman, reading on a bench. Ma'am, one called, his voice hard. May we speak with you? Selena looked up calmly, slid a bookmark into place, and closed the novel. Certainly, she replied, her tone cool. The second officer moved closer, his voice sharp. We got a report about suspicious activity in this area. Care to explain what you're doing? Selena raised her brow, confused, suspicious. I'm sitting here, reading. She lifted the book slightly, as if to prove her point. The officers didn't soften. The first demanded, let me see your ID. Her heart ticked faster, but her expression didn't betray it. Why? She asked. What's the reason? The reply came flat, routine, but the edge in his voice betrayed the word. Around them, a small crowd was forming, people slowing their steps, whispering, watching. Selena exhaled and reached in her bag, producing her license. She handed it over. One officer read it aloud. Selena Torres, stretching her name mockingly, then glanced up. What's your business here, Ms. Torres? Selena's patience stretched thin. I live here, she said evenly. I came to enjoy the park. Is that a problem? He returned the card, but neither moved away. Instead, their questions sharpened. Do you always carry books like that? Are you waiting for someone? His hand hovered near his belt, a gesture not lost on anyone. Selena had argued 1,000 tense cases in court, but here in the open park, the imbalance of power pressed down heavy. She steadied her voice. I'm not answering more questions unless you tell me what I'm accused of. The first officer stepped closer, irritation flashing. Don't get smart with us. We're doing our job, and I know the law, she countered. I'm not breaking it by sitting on a bench, but their agenda wasn't reason. Suddenly his hand latched onto her arm. You're resisting, he barked, though she hadn't twitched. Startled, she cried, what are you doing? Murmurs rippled louder through the crowd. A phone rose, recording. Stop resisting, he shouted louder, as though for an audience. Her heart raced, metal closed around her wrists. Humiliation burned her face, but she kept steady. They marched her toward the cruiser, ignoring onlookers' questions. Her eyes caught a young woman holding up her phone, their gaze locking, a silent plea to bear witness. Then the car door slammed, sealing her inside in the cramped back seat. Selena's mind spun, years of fighting injustice in courtrooms, and now she was on the other side of the bars. Anger surged. The ride was silent, save for the crackle of the radio. Her reflection glared back at her in the window, cuffs cutting her skin. The station was worse, fingerprints, photographs. The cold cell door buzzing shut. Enjoy your stay, one officer sneered. Selena sat stiff on the bench, her hands clasped, thinking over and over how a peaceful afternoon had spiraled so fast. The answer was bitter and clear. Prejudice. Hours dragged until a young officer appeared, clipboard in hand. Ms. Torres, you're charged with resisting arrest and obstructing a peace officer. She snapped. On what grounds? You can discuss it in court, he said before leaving. She let out a slow breath, forcing her thoughts into strategy. Flimsy charges, yes, but she knew the road ahead would not be easy. Her release on bail came hours later. Stepping into the cool night was like breaking water. Her friend Clara was waiting by the curb, face etched with worry. Are you all right? Selena nodded, though a tremor betrayed her. I'm fine, she lied hollowly. In the car, silence pressed until she finally said, Clara, I'm not letting this pass, not this time. Clara glanced at her. What are you planning? Selena's jaw set. I'm done letting this happen. I have the knowledge, the tools, the resources. I'll fight back that night. Her kitchen table became a battlefield. Papers spread, books open. Her pen, racing, her hands shook, not from fear, but from the weight of determination, she began outlining a civil rights lawsuit against the officers and the department in the days that followed. The video, filmed in the park, went viral. The sight of her calm defiance, met with needless force, struck a nerve. People sent messages of support, sharing stories of their own humiliations. Her inbox filled. Her resolve hardened. She wasn't only fighting for herself, but for all those silenced. Her firm hesitated, fearing for its reputation. But she spoke firm. This isn't about me. It's precedent. The weeks ahead blurred with preparation. She combed through precedent, gathered evidence, pulled together a legal team who believed, as she did, justice demanded light, not silence. She also stepped into the community. She listened at town halls, spoke at colleges, heard the pain in stranger stories. One afternoon, leaving a meeting, a woman stopped, her voice trembling. "Ms. Torres, thank you for standing up for us." Selena's throat tightened. She smiled softly. "I'm only doing what I can." But inside she felt the mounting pressure. She couldn't afford to lose. Then came the call, her attorney's voice cautious. "Selena, they filed a motion to dismiss." No surprise. "But there's more." She froze. "You've been assigned as the judge in a misconduct hearing against them." The irony was staggering. For a moment, she leaned back, processing weeks spent preparing to fight them. And now the system handed her the bench. Could she sit impartial? She thought of the crowd that day, of the young woman's phone lifted, of the messages from strangers. This wasn't coincidence. It was an opening to show what true justice meant. The day of the hearing, the courtroom buzzed with low murmurs. Two officers, Miller and Kane, sat at the defense table, their uniforms stiff, their demeanor bored to them. Another hurdle, another case, until the chamber door opened. Silence fell. Selena stepped to the bench in black robe, moving with calm authority. She sat there, faces blanched. Recognition struck them hard. She let silence linger, then her voice cut through. "This court is now in session. Please be seated." Their composure cracked. Miller whispered frantically to their lawyer, who kept his eyes forward. Selena kept hers steady. She was not there for revenge. She would honor her duty, yet the irony was carved deep into every corner of the room. As arguments began, she listened without flinching, taking notes, but she saw their tension, their shoulders rigid, hands twitching. During recess, they slipped into the hall, their voices low. "How the hell is she the judge?" Miller hissed. Kane muttered, "This has to be rigged. It's coincidence." Their lawyer snapped, "She's not your enemy. Your actions are back inside." The hearing continued. Testimonies laid out the excessive force against a young man named Marcus. His voice shook as he described being slammed to the ground during a stop. "I did everything they told me," he said, his eyes darting. "I never resisted. It didn't matter. They decided I was guilty before I spoke." Selena listened, her pen moving, though her face betrayed nothing. The defense tried to tear holes in his story, but he held fast. Their words grew thinner, less convincing. Finally, the officers themselves took the stand. Miller faltered, his voice unsteady. "I thought it was escalating. I made a judgment call." The prosecutor leaned in. "Was it justified?" He stammered. "At the time, yes. But now I see I could have handled it differently." "How?" "By not tackling a compliant, unarmed man." Silence followed, louder than words. Kane's turn was no better. His attempts to excuse himself only painted the pattern clearer. Power used recklessly, without pause. Selena kept her voice steady, her eyes forward, but inside she felt both frustration and pity. These were men given authority, yet they wielded it like a weapon, not a shield. By weeks, and the evidence towered against them. The prosecutor's closing words struck like stone. "Abuse of power must not be tolerated." The defense's final attempt was thin. Even the officers sat resigned. Selena adjourned, announcing her ruling would come the next week. As the room emptied, Miller and Kane lingered, pale, drawn to reality settling. But justice was more than punishment. It was accountability, and change. The following week, the room was full. Every seat claimed reporters lining the walls, pens poised, silence cut thick. Selena entered, her robe flowing. She began her ruling steady. "The role of law enforcement is to protect, not oppress. When that duty is abused, it corrodes trust, harms communities, and violates the very oath sworn." She scanned the room. The evidence shows officers Miller and Kane acted with unnecessary force, ignoring their protocols. Their actions were unjustified and part of a troubling pattern. She delivered the consequences: suspension without pay, mandatory retraining, and a permanent disciplinary record. Firm but fair, not revenge, but accountability. Her gavel fell. Final. The case closed. Miller rose, hesitated, his voice low. "Your Honor, I'm sorry." She gave a small nod. not absolution. True change would come only through action. Later that evening, Selena attended a community gathering, the room alive with voices. People sharing their grief, their relief, their hope. An older woman pressed her hand tightly. Thank you for what you did in that courtroom. It means the world. Selena smiled. This is only the beginning. The case sparked ripples, not only in Aurora, but across the state. Conversations with leaders, activists, and police. New policies demanded new accountability. Called for. One afternoon, she stood on the courthouse steps watching young activists hold signs, their chants rising into the air. And for the first time since that afternoon in the park, she felt a steady flame of hope. The system was flawed, but with enough voices it could bend toward justice. And that was a fight worth giving her life to. If you believe in accountability and change, she thought, then don't look away, don't stay silent, speak, push, and demand together. That is how the world moves forward.